Deo, cheers, man.
All right, man. Let's move forward and start with the Chargers and get to this draft, Drew, because Jerry Tillery, the 28th pick in this draft, defensive tackle out of Notre Dame. How do you like this pick? This is my guy. I love this guy.
Go ahead and admit it. What happened?
Oh, this is like the one pick you got right?
The one pick.
No, the second. You got Kyler Murray, too.
I actually called this pick in our mock draft, and, I don't blame him for taking him. You're talking about a defensive tackle that's going to be a staple point in that defense, and he's going to be a stud. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But this is actually not the pick that I'm super excited about. It's the Adderley pick. I love this pick. He can go play free safety, give Derwin James a chance to play in the box. I mean, to be honest with you, I think Derwin James, instead of interceptions, it's going to be sacks this year. I think if Adderley can pan out the way he's supposed to be, he'll be the one on the high end of the interceptions, and James will be on
in the box,
sacks.
playing up on the line of scrimmage. I absolutely agree, man. I love that pick as well, but Jerry Tillery, I think, is the big pick here. I remember telling you when you said this was how it was going down in the mock draft, I was like, if this is how it happens, it's a great pick for them. I went offensive line instead. I still kind of wonder what they're going to do at guard. That's kind of an issue for me. But they went and took an offensive tackle with Trey Pipkins out of Sioux Falls in the 3rd round. I'm not crazy about him. He's kind of an unknown guy. Maybe he fits something and does something well that I didn't see.
Everyone's saying it's a huge reach for a 3rd-round pick.
So I didn't love that pick necessarily, but it's a 3rd-round pick. Obviously, I feel like they hit home runs with the first round pick with Jerry Tillery, and the 2nd-round pick with Nasir Adderley. I think they did great there. The other guy I want to talk about is Drew Tranquill, inside linebacker from Notre Dame. I think this guy's got some talent, even if he's not the most physically gifted linebacker in the game. He's a smart player. I think he's going to be able to have some impact, and them getting better on the defensive front 7, I think, is how this team takes the next step into the playoffs. So I like what they've done. I think they did a great job bringing on another safety as well. The Chargers, the only thing I can say be a little bit critical on is they didn't address offensive line as well as I thought they should have.
Yeah, they reached a little bit in that 3rd-round pick. But you know what? All being said, when I have to grade them, I give them an A. I think they had a great draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, Steve says, shout out to the Bills for letting the cancer battler and Bills superfan Pancho Billis to call the Ed Oliver pick. I thought that was awesome too, man, especially that early in the draft to let him get an opportunity to go on stage. I think it was a really good move, really classy move by the NFL. I'm glad they did it. But let's grade the Chargers draft here, Drew. What would you give them?
I gave them an A.
I wasn't listening to you. I also gave them an A. I think this was fantastic. Again, the only kind of reach I saw here was Trey Pipkins out of Sioux Falls. Could be a good offensive tackle. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know enough about him because he slipped beyond my range of guys I watched beforehand. But if he does fit and he can boost this offensive line at all, we're going to be talking about this being a solid cornerstone draft for the Chargers going forward.
Shay, we absolutely love your negativity. The Turtles, as Deo said, don't like you back, not even a little bit.
I was going to say, they have to stick around now, right?
Now you got to wait until we talk about how crappy your Saints draft is.
Let me just pump the brakes here really quick, Shay, because I believe we had a beer bet. I believe you told me Kyler Murray was going to the Oakland Raiders, and I told you he was going to Arizona. If you remember, I think you got to admit somebody was right down there in the comments. So go ahead, we're waiting. Whenever you're ready.
Steve gave the Chargers an A-. I agree with you completely. I gave him an A. I really love the Adderley pick. I think that's what pushed him over the top for me, off of an A-, B+, but it was a great draft for the Chargers all around.
Always got to gloat when you get the chance. So
absolutely.
We're still waiting. Go ahead. Feel free.
Waiting.
Let's talk Rams next, though, Drew. At this pick in the 2nd round, obviously they traded their first away in years past. They went with Taylor Rapp, safety out of Washington. How did you feel about this? Getting the kind of hitting safety to play next to Eric Weddle. I look at this pick. I like it. I mean, I get it. You could have gone other directions. A lot of people are kind of criticizing them, or I've seen a lot of criticism of them saying they didn't necessarily need a safety here, but I like Taylor Rapp as a player. I think inside the box he's going to be a good tackler. Pass protection, maybe somewhere in the middle. I wouldn't necessarily call him a lead at it, but he can do it. I think upgrading in the back end of this defense can absolutely help because they've already got the defensive line solved as long as Aaron Donald's there. As long as he's churning out 20 sacks a year, I think they're going to be just fine up front.
Yeah, I think so too. Of course, the general manager came out, and I'm blanking on his name right now, the Rams, went out and said Taylor Rapp was their first-round grade. That was the guy they wanted to take in the first round. They're excited to get him where they got him. Do I fully believe that? No, but I do think that he was high on their boards. For someone like that to sit behind Weddle and learn how to play the game like the way Weddle has played for these long years in the NFL, you couldn't ask for a better option for Rapp to learn under.
Good mentor for sure. Obviously, I think Weddle's going to play more of the free safety. He's going to drift back a little bit, and they're going to play Taylor Rapp forward more, unless they do too high safety.
It's
and
still
drop
a
him
great
back
guy
deeper.
to learn how to play safety.
I agree, and I'm not disagreeing with you there, but
Right.
I'm saying I think at the very least, I think we're going to see a lot of these guys on the field at the same time.
Daryl Henderson's a little bit of a head scratcher for me. That's their second pick overall. It was taken in the third round. I get it. Gurley's hurt. I get it that there's arthritis in his knee, but the guy could still play right now. I mean, is it too much of a high pick when there's so many other needs for a team to be taking instead of your second pick?
I actually
overall?
like this pick. I think it's not exactly a steal or anything, but I think this is the right kind of value for a running back like Henderson because he's a power back that is going to be able to carry the load and also going to take some snaps off of Todd Gurley. I don't think it's so much, well, we have Todd Gurley, we don't need to worry about running back. This is about getting some of that workload off his plate because I think going into like week 10 or 11, he'd already carried the ball 300 times or something like that. You can't sit there and abuse a guy that's going to be your future going forward that badly and expect him to hold up over the length of his career. So I have no problem with a guy who can split carries. I think Henderson's going to be that. He doesn't really stand much help in the passing game, but he can pass block pretty well as well. It's a good spell back. And I think, to me, that's worth it for a third-round pick.
I just think there's other needs that they could have taken with their second overall pick that they had in this draft. But I don't mind the Buddy Evans tackle pick. This is a guy that they're going to wait for a year at least, maybe two, depending on when Andrew Whitworth decides to retire. Talk about another veteran that a young rookie can learn behind and learn how to play a position properly. I don't hate the Rams draft. I think that with what they did in trading back worked out for them. I give them a B.
Shay says, I won the bet. Well, I'm waiting for my reward, Shay. Well, actually, that was my reward. Never mind. Also, Steve says, honestly, I think the Rams take a step back this year. I'm with you, Steve. I don't know. They kind of had a little bit of fatigue, but we saw some of the better teams, except for maybe the Chiefs, have some of that late season fatigue this year. I wonder whether we're going to get the Rams at 100%, especially with Gurley having, an arthritic knee, or whether they are actually going to take a step back. I don't know. I think they're likely to probably be one of the teams that isn't quite as good as they were before.
Deo is saying that Gurley is done. Man, I don't think he's done, man. He's just too young to be done, but I don't think he can do the workload that's been asked upon him. That's why
I don't think anyone can. It's not even like you're not going to get long range in today's NFL out of giving a guy 400 to 500 carries a game or a year, or touches, I should say, not carries. It's just not going to happen. Nobody's body can take that pounding, even as big as a guy as Todd Gurley is. I think you need to get him more rest during the week, and I think you need to get him more rest during the individual games as well. That's why you take a second running back. These days, as much as fantasy owners hate it, you don't get many of these guys that carry the entire load for a season long because you use them up, and then they usually only have 4 or 5 year careers, and they're out the door. That's why I like this Henderson pick. I think if you have a value like Gurley is, you got to get another guy to take some of the work off his shoulders.
Joey, I'm glad you could join us, man. I'm glad you're enjoying that beer. Shay says he drank all the beer. Sorry, Jay.
Shay also wants to know, how drunk were you at the draft? I don't know. I was pretty messed up myself. I couldn't keep track of him.
That's none of your business.
We had a good time. That's all we're going to say. But let's grade this Rams draft. I want to mention one more guy before we do, though. David Long, cornerback out of Michigan. To me, this is another steal. I'm going to criticize some of these cornerback picks that went ahead of this guy. This is the kind of value you should have been taking in the second round, and you let him fall into the third because you're worried about his tackling. You don't pay corners to tackle the running back. You pay them to guard receivers. This kid is going to be a great guy when it comes to guarding receivers. That's why I was kind of scratching my head to see him go this far down in the draft. I think we still have a bit of an antiquated kind of idea of what these cornerbacks need to be doing. Nobody runs that much that you need to worry about a running back tackling the running, or cornerback tackling the running back.
Maybe beyond playing Seattle,
or the Titans.
They do play in Seattle quite a bit.
That's true. That's true.
Well,
but
at
the end of the day, Drew, that's 2 games, maybe 3 if you see them again in the playoffs. You need a corner who's going to cover for those other 13. David Long is going to do that. Now let's grade him.
I already gave him a B.
I'm going to go B+. I like everything they've done here. I really like the David Long pick. Again, maybe he's just one of my guys, but getting him in the third round I think was incredible value for them. Like Taylor Rapp in the second as well. They did a good job all across the board. I'm not crazy about Bobby Evans, but I feel like that's about the right spot for him to go.
Yeah, and I'm just not crazy about Daryl Henderson. I think at the second pick overall for the Rams draft, they need to go some other option. I'm not saying running back wasn't a priority, but they seemed to do it okay in free agency last year, so why couldn't they just wait for something to pan out that way? But I get it.
And that's fair enough. I mean, they could have gone and paid any one of these veterans out there,
It's
too.
still a good draft. B is not bad.
Absolutely. Also, Edward says Steelers get a B+. We'll talk about them in a little bit. And Steve says the Rams also give a B+. I'm with you there as well. Edward also doesn't want to talk about the Bills. Well, don't worry about that. We got them out of the way in our first show. We're actually talking the back end of the alphabetical order here. So you won't have to worry about a team like Buffalo.
Nope.
Next on the clock, though, Drew, let's talk about Miami. Christian Wilkins, no quarterback with that first pick. Obviously, they went other routes to go and address that. We're not talking about Rosen. He's not going to impact our grades here because he's already a current player in the NFL. How do you feel about Wilkins off the board first for them?
I like this pick. This is a better pick. I think it does fill a need, but when you're talking about Miami, that's all there is needs everywhere across the board. Like you said, they did trade for Josh Rosen, but we're not putting that in perspective towards this grading this draft. My only question mark, and I do like it. I'm not sitting there hating it. They drafted 2 running backs in the 7th round. They did a young man, Cox. He's 6'1", and then Gaskins at 5'9". Now they already got Drake there, so they
and Kalen Ballage. Let's not forget about him. He had a good game or two this year.
So you're telling me somewhere along that line you don't believe in those guys as your number 2 or 3 back. I do like the difference in size. I do like the difference in players where you're looking at big back versus smaller back. But it's a little bit of a question mark of why you wasted 2 picks when there's so many other needs.
Can
on
I
this
explain
team.
it to you? Because Brian Flores just came from New England, where they have like 3,800 usable running backs, and he's saying, "I'm going to do exactly what we did in New England. I'm going to bring all these guys in, and it's going to work."
He's not Belichick.
Well, that's the problem. Everybody thinks they're Belichick or thinks they're going to copy New England, and then it never works out. So I feel like that was the plan of attack. And it was the 7th round. You can throw those picks away. Maybe they saw value at that position and then said, let's just take a couple guys and see which one of them sticks. I'm okay with it. Again, the 7th round to me isn't going to impact anyone's draft unless they go get a huge steal and it moves their grade up. Pretty much anything else, I'm not going to really affect their grade too much.
Right.
The other guy I want to talk about, Michael Dieter, offensive guard for Wisconsin. It's time to fix the line in Miami, right? How long has that line been broken? This is just the next step towards it. I think this is decent value here. I think they got decent value all along.
You literally nailed what I'm saying. It's those 2 7th-round picks. One of them could have been offensive lineman. I get that running back's important.
I'm with you.
But those are the times that you kind of reach a little bit to grab players that are in super dire need.
The only other thing,
back-to-back running backs kind of make you do a little bit of a head scratch.
I get what you're saying, but what offensive lineman are you taking out of the 7th round that's just going to immediately turn into a starter?
Dude, you never know.
You don't, but you kind of do. So,
Tom Brady was the 6th round.
Okay, that's going to be your excuse forever, right?
Excuse, yeah. Yes, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. When you're
fair enough.
You're one of the best that ever played. Yeah, we'll talk about you being picked in the 6th round.
Hey, fair enough, Drew. I guess there's that 7th round offensive starting left tackle that everybody just missed. But let's grade Miami. How do you feel they did?
I gotta give them a C+. I absolutely love the Christian Wilkinson pick. It's huge. It makes complete sense. But after that, I don't really think they do a whole lot picking players that really are a dire need at that point in time in that position. Hold on real quick before you go. Deo says you have to include Rosen with the draft rating, though. They had to give up picks, so I think it should be included. They actually have a franchise quarterback and accomplished it through the draft. Man, I absolutely agree with what you're saying, but we're trying to take that out of there because when you sit there and go, we tell all drafts or all trades go in there, you're going to sit there and tell me that Kansas City doesn't get an A+ because one of these picks they gave away was Patrick Mahomes. No one wants to hear about that. We've talked about Patrick Mahomes over and over again. We try to throw the trades out of it because it doesn't actually apply to who the players are taking out of college.
And more importantly, it's also a known factor, whereas every one of these other guys is an unknown factor, so it wouldn't exactly be fair. Otherwise, you'd always go with the known factor, and it would always bump these draft grades up, number one. And number two, it's what the way we try to grade everything is we look at what they did with these picks. So even if you have a 3rd and a 4th round pick, and that's all you have, if you get guys who are good players in the 3rd and 4th round, you get a high grade. So we try to focus entirely on what picks did you have and what kind of rookies did you bring in here when it comes to a draft grade.
And I do want to rephrase myself. That was last year's draft with Kansas City, but that was my point behind it was they traded one of their picks away, and they got Patrick Mahomes a year before. So this year when they traded number 29, they got Frank Clark. Well, Frank Clark's obviously a proven player, so their draft has to be an A+ because they got Frank Clark.
Right, exactly. Brian's also saying Miami is worth a C. I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to go B- here for Miami because I like Christian Wilkins. I think that was good value in that 1st round pick, even though he's a little bit older. Maybe I would have liked to see Dexter Lawrence instead of Wilkins first. It's still a good defensive lineman, and that's been a huge need for them forever. I like building from the defensive line first, so I like Christian Wilkins going there first. They got a solid offensive guard as well out of Wisconsin. B- for me. I'm not going to sit there and tell you they did anything special, but they did okay with what they had.
Steve says, I kind of like the moves for Miami in the AFC East and will be much more competitive this year. Man, I don't...
I think they take a step back. I don't think they win 7 games.
That's the question is they overachieved last year, in my opinion. They completely overachieved. Does Ryan Fitzpatrick, does Josh Rosen make more wins than 7 wins, man? I don't see it. But that being said, overall grade, I give them a C+.
Let's move forward and talk about Minnesota next. First pick, 18th overall, Garrett Bradbury, a center. They took the first interior offensive lineman in this draft here out of NC State. How'd you feel about this? Because I think you could have taken one of those tackles. You could have taken Cody Ford and played him at guard. You could have taken anyone else and moved him on the interior. Instead, they wanted to spring for the center, and I get it. There weren't a lot of great centers in this draft either, Drew, but 18th overall for an interior offensive lineman is usually high when you look at some of these other guys. You better be getting a great value like the Colts got last year with their rookie, whose name I'm drawing a blank on,
Nelson.
of course. Nelson. Unless you're getting a value like that, spending an interior lineman on a first-round pick, it's pretty expensive.
I get it, and it makes all the sense in the world when you sit there and say an interior lineman isn't a fancy pick. But you brought up a great point with Nelson. Look at like what Max Unger did in the Saints.
And that's true.
And if someone like Bradbury can make that much of a difference, I mean, it really takes, and it sounds so ridiculous, but it takes one guy with one personality that pushes all the rest of the linemen around to make them be better. It takes that one guy. So if Bradbury is that guy, because there's no doubt about it, Minnesota Vikings offensive line was terrible.
And I think everybody under the sun had them taking an offensive lineman.
Do it.
But my question is, this offensive lineman, is that the right one?
That's the guy that they had. That's the guy they had at the top of their list.
But we're worried about, is that the right one? For these grades, is that the right guy? I look at him, I just didn't see anything that particularly special. Not out of Bradbury. I didn't see, he's not Quentin Nelson. He's not anyone else that I think is worth pick 18. Like I said, I would rather them take any one of these left tackles, either move Riley Reef inside to play guard, or move that tackle inside to play guard instead. I guess they prioritized the center position. Maybe they looked at it and said, center's got to be a bigger need than guard is, even though I think their guard play was two of the worst in the NFL last year.
Bradbury can play guard if need be.
And that's true. That's true as well. But, Drew, I look at this pick, I'm not crazy about it. And then we're going to kind of compound that, and into the second round, we're going to talk about Irv Smith coming off the board at pick 18 for them as well. He's an undersized tight end. Yes, he's going to be a pass catcher. Yes, he's going to be a number 2 tight end. But this team, again, you could have gone. This could have been a center. This could have been an interior lineman to help work on this offensive line. You could have even doubled up and tried to protect Kirk Cousins. Instead, you're going to take a second tight end who's too small to block anybody.
Well, I think this kind of shows what they think about Kyle Rudolph. This is his last year. I think he's going to make about around $6 to $7 million this year. I mean, this is it. He's going to be looking for a big contract. Maybe they don't value the tight end position to pay high dollar amount. Maybe they're hoping that Smith will come out and pan out to be, because obviously they didn't get the Hawkinson. They didn't get the Noah Fant. But they did get arguably the second best or third best tight end in this draft. Do I think it's the right move? Maybe not. But what I do like to target a little bit is they had 9 picks, the most picks on day 3rd out of any team. That's huge. That's where you get your special team players. That's where you get, your 6th and 7th linemen out of. It's huge for a team like that that's struggling for depth, where they get all those picks down there. A little bit of moving and dealing. I like this draft. I think Minnesota did as best they possibly could. Minus, you can sit there and knock Bradbury's draft, where he should have been and shouldn't have been. I actually give him a B+.
Now, Steve says Minnesota is going to struggle. And let me say this. If there was a team I was going to pick to rebound a little bit in the AFC North, I'd probably say, the Packers. And then after that, I'd probably say the Vikings. I think if this offensive line gets any bit better, Kirk Cousins is going to look a lot better, and this team's going to go back to being somewhat dangerous. They still have too much talent to ignore. And Nate also says he hopes so. Of course, we talk bad about Minnesota, and Nate pops up out of the bushes. Man, good to see you, Nate. I knew we were going to hear from you when I saw that. Also, let's talk about their 3rd round pick, Alexander Madison, running back out of Boise State. I think they got solid value here. You got to replace their running back, Latavius Murray. Thank you. You're bailing me out tonight. You got to replace Latavius Murray in that power back kind of spell number 2 role. I think this guy's the perfect guy to do it. I think a 3rd round pick is absolutely where a lot of these running backs should have started coming off the board instead of what Oakland spent in the 1st round. And I also like Drew Samia, offensive guard out of Oklahoma. This is where that value comes in. You're getting a great guard out of Oklahoma who's going to be able to fill in, probably be a day 1 starter in the 4th round, and you didn't have to blow a 1st round pick on him. That is where I think the Vikings draft was strongest, is at the bottom end rather than the 1st. One more guy, Chris Boyd in the 7th round, cornerback out of Texas. I think for a 7th round pick, they got a lot of value here. This guy might step in and be a good nickel or dime corner. I like this pickup. I think he's going to be able to be effective from day 1 in the NFL. So I really like this bottom end of the draft, at least.
Nate, we're glad that you have a chance to watch us, man. Life is busy. We we struggle to reach our, timeline with you guys and making sure it happens. Our schedules are always changing, especially mine. I know I'm always the one missing from this show more than actually Jake's never missed a show, so that's the best way to put that. But
I'm like the Patriots. We take no days off.
but I'm glad you're here, man. To be honest with you, I like Minnesota's draft. I really do. Are the top picks a little bit questionable? Yeah, that's the reason why I'm not giving them an A. But I love the fact that they grab value in those 9 picks in the late round. That's why I gave them a B+.
I went with a solid B. And again, even though I wasn't crazy about Bradbury going there, I still think he's a solid value player, so I can't knock them down too bad here because I think he is going to be a good starter in the NFL. I think I'd like this better if this is like a high second-round pick, maybe a mid-round second pick for Bradbury.
I don't think he would have been there.
Maybe not, but there was also guys like Elton Jenkins and a couple other guys in the interior that could have slotted in, and you could have gotten the second round. That's why I'm a little bit lower than you, I think. Still a decent player. I think Minnesota, short of them taking Irv Smith, didn't really stumble too big in this draft. I'm going to give him a B.
Brian's giving him a B-, so he's kind of in the same boat as we are.
Let's talk about New England next, because we have to. We're contractually obligated to talk about this draft.
Steve is also getting the Vikings a B-.
All right, Drew. N'Keal Harry. The first time Bill Belichick has taken a first-round wide receiver. Things are changing in New England.
How do you want me to approach this?
I don't know. I mean, when they took him, I was like, that's a good pick.
Let me tell you guys right now. Julian Edelman, the value that he has in Fantasy League, this guy's going to take half of that value. I mean, you can pick, I think either one would be a great value in later rounds. But to be honest with you, the fact that he's a young guy, he's a little bit raw, but guess what? Tom Brady likes those guys. Tom Brady loves to develop those guys. He's going to be in training camp when he finally decides to show up. And he's going to sit there and work with this young guy. And he's going to sit there and develop him into the receiver that he wants him to be. Anytime the Patriots take a receiver in the first round, you better be going, okay, this guy.
Well, this is the time. It's never happened before under Belichick in the first round.
That's what I'm getting at.
Exactly.
That's what I'm getting at. It's time to go, okay, this guy's going to be a huge option. Minus him just not learning the playbook or getting hurt, man, you better be looking at him in fantasy.
And I already believe he's going to be one of those Patriot guys. They're not going to spend a first-round pick if they're not sure. I'm sure Tom Brady's seen plenty of his film and says, I can work with this guy. If he falls to us at 32, you have my blessing to go take him. So I absolutely believe N'Keal Harry is going to be the receiver they need. And I'm going to fade your kind of fantasy moment there and say, don't worry about Julian Edelman. They only have a couple receivers still in New England. I think there's going to be enough for both of these guys to eat. I actually like both of them in fantasy a little bit better than you do.
I said that. I just say don't expect Edelman to be like what he's done.
I'm going to say don't worry about it. Someone's got to catch the ball. Gronk is gone. I'm going to say Edelman is going to be exactly who he was, and this kid's going to fill in a little bit behind him.
One of my only knocks that the New England didn't do was take a tight end during this draft. They must have not believed in any of them.
Well, let's keep going through it because I have like 7 guys I want to talk about. 7 great picks that I was like, man, they got good value here. One of them was not Joejuan Williams, though. Cornerback out of Vandy. I like this guy, but there were better corners in there. Again, maybe this comes down to he fits our need or he fits the kind of player we want to bring into our organization and everything. But I think when it comes from a pure talent standpoint, Joejuan Williams probably does not deserve a second round. Not when you have guys like David Long out of Michigan that were falling deeper behind him in the draft. I think the Patriots could have gone another direction here, but I think when you look at the way they've drafted back beforehand, I'm willing to sit there and say, I was wrong, and they weren't.
I like the Williams pick, to be honest with you. I don't really see him being a number 2 at the very first day. I see him being more of a nickel, maybe a dime package, but he's going to fit their needs because guess what? They need a young guy who can move with this speed because besides Gilmore, who else is young that's in their corner?
And that's true. They are getting a little bit older, and this is what they like to do. They like to stack these guys up and have them just step into the role, so that way when somebody comes up on a big free agent contract, you don't have to pay them because you already have the heir apparent. So
let's talk about...
Well, hold on. I need to preface something you're going to criticize later in the draft. Them building for the future is okay, but other teams building for the future, not so much.
Not when they pick the wrong value. All right.
Fair enough.
We'll move forward.
Let's talk about Chase Winovich,
the
defensive
steal
end.
of the draft, in my opinion.
This guy's better than Rashawn Gary. At least he was at Michigan.
Numbers wise, he did. He definitely benefited from a very talented defense in Michigan. Obviously, you look at like Devin Bush and you look at Rashawn Gary. He definitely got lucky having a lot of great players around him, but he's definitely got really lucky going to New England Patriots. There's no doubt about it. I like this guy. I think he was a steal of the draft. When you see all that production, it's not because he got lucky. I'm joking. He literally is a talented guy. He knows where the ball is. He's a ball hawk. He goes after it. He has a motor that's really kind of one of those unstoppable motors that you want to look for and New England that looks for. He kind of reminds me of all those players that New England has that if you put them anywhere else, they don't do that great. maybe like a Mike Vrabel or Ninkovich.
Well, I'm
where,
actually,
where
and
you sit
you
there.
know, I have to bring it back to the Titans. I've heard a lot of comparisons to guys like Kyle Vanden Bosch, where maybe he's not the most physically gifted guy, but he has a motor and he's going to wear down the other player.
Yeah.
He's going to try hard on every play and he's going to make things happen because he just wears down the opponent.
Exactly, but New England's got to use them just
and New
like
England
those other
likes,
guys.
yeah, exactly. And New England loves guys with those high motors. They love the guys who come in and work every day. That's why I think this pick is perfect. I mean, honestly, I had him going to New England a little bit earlier, but I think this is tremendous value as well. I think this is maybe one of the steals of the draft here. When you look at what he did at Michigan and Rashawn Gary going at number 12 to the Packers, I think the Patriots got a heck of a player in the third round. All right, let's keep rolling because they got a lot of these guys. Damian Harris, running back out of Alabama. Again, this is a decent value pick. They got the other guy who's not Josh Jacobs, who's not going to be a first-round pick. I think he's also got some value. They're going to mix him in there. This might be Rex Burkhead, the next Rex Burkhead. I think Rex Burkhead's seen his role kind of diminish here. I think he may not be as talented as the Patriots want him to be. I think this guy is going to be the guy who pounds the rock when they need to pound the rock, and maybe we see Burkhead kind of phase out when it comes to contract time. Yadni Kajus, another great steal, offensive tackle out of West Virginia. This is going to be the Trent Brown replacement eventually. He's going to be a guy that maybe doesn't slot in right away, but the Patriots know what they're doing when drafting offensive linemen. I think this kid's got good value going this late in the draft. Hulty Froholt, a guy that the Saints should have taken instead of their center. I think this kid is absolutely fantastic. He can play guard, he can play center. Out of Arkansas, another great offensive lineman. When you've got a 41-year-old quarterback, you put offensive linemen in front of him. They've got 2 steals in the third round here. A third and a fourth round steal here. One more guy, Drew. Jarrett Stidham. I didn't expect this. A fourth-round quarterback from Auburn.
Yes, Joey. Beer us up, man. We need beers, man. If you're always offering, we need one.
Absolutely, man. We'll take whatever you got. I know Drew's not very discriminatory when it comes to beer. I think he'll take anything. Exactly. As long as it's not near beer, we're good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Last one, Jarrett Stidham. I did not see them taking a quarterback in the fourth round. I know a lot of people were saying they're going to take the West Virginia quarterback Will Grier with the first round pick and everything. They kind of shut everybody up for a little while at least, and then at the end of round 4, they go and take a guy like Stidham, who is incredibly a growth candidate. If I had to pick one of these guys that's going to sit there, evolve into a spot in the late rounds, I think he might be it. I think he's one of those guys that even though he was at Auburn, he ran kind of a funky offensive scheme with Gus Malzahn there, but I think he's going to be able to evolve into a passer. He has everything you want to see in terms of accuracy. He just needs to take a few of these chances he's taking and kind of scale back on that. I think he's going to be a great player, though. Steal for the Patriots at the bottom end of this draft, Drew.
Before I give my grade, does New England, does Belichick kind of get that, they're stealing another draft pick. They're making the best of their draft again. Do they get that persona because they've done it for so long over and over again?
Yeah,
because I say that because they got my highest grade. This is the only team I have to give this to. I give them an A+. They're the only team, in my opinion, in this draft that literally hit every mark that makes complete sense every time they took a pick.
Well, I actually look at this, and this is the second A+ I'm giving out. The only other A+, not to spoil anything for you guys. I have 2. Arizona, I gave 1 because I think they hit value all the way through the draft. And then the other one I gave an A+ to was New England here. Look, man, I'm talking about 7 picks here being good value or steals. They killed it. They had 10 picks, and they absolutely killed it. They only were a couple guys that I didn't think were worth mentioning, and it wasn't because they were bad, just because they didn't necessarily light the scoreboard up. New England always has great drafts. We know that about them. Yeah. But when you look at what they've done this year, I'm looking at guys like Yadi Kajus, Hulty Froholt. Man, these guys should have been second and third round picks, and they're grabbing him as a compensatory third round pick. They're taking a fourth round pick and getting this guy.
Right.
They're back at it again.
Hey, Brian's kind of in the same boat as we are. Brian gives them an A-. I know you threw that grade out there a little bit earlier, but, I mean, you can't complain about it.
He already had it loaded. He's all right, they're already getting it.
Just give it to him.
All right, Drew, New Orleans is on the clock next, man. Why don't we talk about Eric McCoy, their first pick?
I wonder if Shay's still in to hear us talk about his Saints.
I hope he is, because Eric McCoy as a center, I think is still decent value, even though I've seen a lot of people sit there and say he's not worth it as an offensive lineman. Look, they needed one desperately when Max Unger kind of kneecapped them and retired after free agency, so you couldn't go replace him with anybody else. And just like I said with Tom Brady, you can never bring on enough offensive linemen to protect a quarterback that's in his 40s. That's exactly where the Saints are at. I think they did a good job bringing on Eric McCoy here.
This is exactly where I was talking about, where Bradbury would not have fallen to the Minnesota Vikings in the second round. This is a team that I would have seen them being targeted there. I think I actually had them in my mock draft going to that spot. That being said, they made the right decision. I think they moved up. I mean, maybe besides Dalton and Reisner. I mean, but he's more of his. He can play every day. He can play every position on the line. He can play. He's a 5-position guy. Maybe you want more of a center scenario where it's just that guy. And Eric McCoy fits that position 100%.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. But let's talk about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, their 4th-round safety. We love this kid too, man. When it comes to coverage, this kid might be one of the best coverage safeties in all of the NFL. And when I watch him play, man, this is a guy that you can play at the nickelback. You can play him at safety as well and drop him over the top, let him play some zone coverage. I love this pick because you look at the Saints, they're going to be scoring a lot of points. They're going to have other teams trying to play catch up with them. You need guys who are going to defend the pass like Marcus Lattimore. I love this pick, man. I think this is going to be a great safety to play over the top of Lattimore.
Absolutely. This is kind of another one of those, steal of picks that we thought we had. Both of us, I think, had him targeted towards the Patriots at one point
in the
time.
second round. I think, yeah.
So
we're high. We're both high on this guy.
It's a great pick for him. I think it'll work out really well. Ever since Vaccaro left, I think they've been obviously looking for another safety to kind of fill that position. Gardner Johnson, as all his. Everyone that grades him down, there's a lot of positives behind all of that downness too.
All right, so grade him, Drew. How did they do?
I gotta give him a B+.
I'm also gonna say B+ here, and it's for the simple fact of Gardner Johnson going that late. Eric McCoy again, I think is a value pick, but Gardner Johnson going that late, they didn't, but they did a good job with the ones they had.
They did.
Absolutely. Let's move forward and talk about the Giants next. What do you say? Let's talk about Daniel Jones.
Your boy.
This is gonna surprise you. I did meet him, and honestly, I was like, I hope he succeeds. He's a nice guy.
Brian gives the Saints a B. You met him. He's your boy now.
That's not true.
No.
I love every rookie quarterback is mine except for Baker Mayfield. No, even Baker Mayfield's my boy. Every young
Baker's
quarterback is my guy.
Patrick Mahomes my guy. You get everybody else.
I get Tyrod Taylor. That's my guy.
That's your guy.
All right, fair enough. Daniel Jones, though, at 6. I know the reports have come out that the Giants and you were saying the coaches and an agent was saying, oh, if they waited to 17, he wasn't going to be there. Well, what else is the agent supposed to say? Of course he's supposed to say that. No. I'm sorry. I really do believe the Giants, they tripped over themselves here. Short of Dwayne Haskins being overlooked by everybody in the NFL and falling, like the report said before the draft, I think the Giants just overreached. They said, he's our guy. We're going to get him no matter what. You could have traded back. You should have traded back. There were a lot of teams that probably could have moved up at 6 to go and take Josh Allen. Instead, they stuck and they took their quarterback. I think it's a misstep. Not for the fact that I think Daniel Jones is never going to be an NFL quarterback. There's a chance of that, but I think he's going to be okay. He's a developmental guy. Maybe if they play Eli for another year or two and let him learn and just throw those years away, as much as I hate Eli, I think this is the right call. I think eventually he could wind up being an okay quarterback in the NFL. The problem is, when you're taking a 6th pick on a guy, you can't just be okay, right, Drew? You can't just be okay at the 6th pick.
I believe the rumors. I fully believe them. If this was prior to the draft, where they're sitting there saying, we cannot trade back because the guy that we're targeting is being targeted in between our first pick and our second pick.
And they said it's going to be 2 teams.
I would believe it.
But I need to interrupt you. I need to interrupt you. Let me say this here first. There were 2 teams, right, reportedly going to take Daniel Jones. Who were they? We all know who they are. Miami, Washington. Miami picks at 12, I believe, or 13. And Washington picks at 15. 15. So, trade back to 12, trade back to 11, trade back to 10, and then go take it.
They could trade up to that value above you.
And they could.
It was the right move.
Come
on. If this was their guy, if he was the number... I will say this again because we argued about this.
Now he's your guy. Now
we argued about this.
This is your guy.
No, hold on. We argued about this in the first round. If you value someone... if you value someone and you have him on your board as the number 1 guy, and he falls to you at that pick, you take him.
And here's the reverse of that.
You take
Is
him.
he the number 1 guy?
Or
is this your scouts being wrong? Well, I get that. He may be their number 1 guy, but we're not the Giants. We need to sit back and look and say, Giants, is this a good pick?
The Giants didn't call you, Jake.
No, they didn't, but like, you know what? They should have, Drew.
Guess what?
We're going to go with Eli Manning again. I would have said, no, you can't do that. You got to go after someone else. Probably go take Dwayne Haskins and then give up on him in a couple of years.
Jimmy says probably about 15 to 20 guys with first-round talent. Jones is not one of them. Actually, Jimmy, I have heard that a lot of the teams and scouts gone out and they said that it's about 13 players. We're about first-round talent. That's why you saw a lot of the good teams trade out of the first round going down because a lot of the talent was sitting there second and third round.
So let me just say this. One more final thing on this Daniel Jones pick, and then we got to talk about some of these other guys they also took on, day 1, 2, 3. Last year, when we had a deep quarterback class and they had the second overall pick, they said, we're okay at quarterback. We don't need to take one. We're going to take Saquon Barkley instead. And you were cool with that.
I am cool
And
with
then
that.
this year, when we have a thin quarterback class, and everyone's like, these guys probably aren't going to pan out. Maybe even Kyler Murray doesn't pan out, who's the best by far. You're okay with them taking and reaching for a quarterback here. They should have flipped, Drew. They should have taken a quarterback at 2 last year, and then this year's the year you take somebody else. I don't care. I don't care. It's a running back in the NFL. Go take anybody and build a good offensive line and don't worry about it. How about that?
That makes sense.
Look, that to me has been the biggest misstep for the Giants, is this Daniel Jones pick. And again, I've met him. He's a nice guy. I hope he works out. I hope he's worth pick 6. I have nothing, there's no ill will here. But I got to play analytics here, Drew,
Scott,
and I just don't think he's that good. He had like a 54% completion rate at Duke.
Scott is saying that the Giants didn't want Eli to compete for the job. Haskins would have challenged him.
You can't do that. If you didn't want a guy to compete, you can't go take another guy. So that's the only thing, Scott. If they didn't want Eli to compete for a job, you can't take another quarterback. You got to let it go. You can't take a six overall guy and say he's not going to compete for the starting job in year 1.
I'll tell you right now, if they drop 3 games behind 500, there's no doubt Daniel Jones will be starting.
And I agree.
I'll sit here and say this again. Regardless of what they did last year, this year, if that guy is number 1 on your board, regardless of what position it is, he falls to you and you don't expect to pick him up again, you draft him. You draft him. Do I agree with what the Giants did? No.
And that's why we're
because
going to dunk on
I
this
don't
draft.
have Daniel Jones as my number 2 quarterback. But that's just what it is. But you know what? To be honest with you, that's not the pick.
And you are right about that. I don't mean to sit there and say you're not right about that. But my point is, you need to be able to scout better than this. When the kid has a 54% completion percentage in the ACC, okay, that's a fair criticism.
Right.
But 54% in the ACC, what is that going to look like in the NFL when those windows get tighter? It's going to be rough. So to me, that is my biggest criticism.
But you know what,
again,
though?
I hope he succeeds. I just don't believe he's going to.
But you know what, though? That isn't even what makes this draft.
I'm not a Giants fan, so I don't have to worry about it.
Literally, it sounds so ridiculous, but it's like, throw the 6th pick out. Don't even consider that pick because with their next 2 picks, they pick up Dexter Lawrence, with we both consider one of the best defensive tackles in this draft.
And they did redeem themselves in the back end.
And then they picked up Andre Baker, who you consider the best corner in this draft.
Yes,
I
I
have him in my top 5.
And he was also the first corner off the board.
Off the board. Absolutely. And then they grab who we both consider a top 10 corner, and Julian Love out of, I think, Notre Dame.
Yep.
And so those picks just
those
right
are great.
there.
And let me throw another one at
redeem
Let me throw
everything
another
that
couple
he
at
did.
you here. Because as much as I wanted to sit there and say they had a bad draft because of the Daniel Jones thing, O'Shane Zimenez, I'm not going to make you say that. D-end out of Old Dominion. But now that I said it,
Yeah.
okay. Out of Old Dominion is a good value pick. He's going to be a good guy that's going to fill in for Olivier Vernon. He's not going to be a home run right away. But it addresses a need a little bit.
I like his size. I like his bend. I like how he can move. He had a great Senior Bowl. But guess what? He's going to have a lot of time to develop.
And he's also going to make an impact on the edge in the run game as well. I like that a lot.
He's going to need some time.
Darius Slayton, receiver out of Auburn. I think this is another slot guy that's going to make an impact in the NFL. And they need to get better at wide receiver. With Odell Beckham leaving, I know they just paid Sterling Shepard, and they brought on Golden Tate and everything like that. But they need to get better at wide receiver. If you're going to draft a young quarterback, you might as well put a lot of weapons around him. I like Slayton in the 5th round as well. Corey Ballantyne, cornerback out of Washington. This, to me, another great cornerback, another guy I like. In the 6th, I saw him as a 4th or 5th round pick. To get him in the 6th, he's going to be a developmental guy a little bit, but he's going to be a guy that is a good value pick for the Giants.
Absolutely.
I love this spot. I love Corey Ballantyne going there. So except for Daniel Jones going at 6, and like you said, maybe this is just their guy, and they're like, we're going to take him. It doesn't matter. You can't change our minds. We're just taking him. Except for that, they had a really good draft.
They had a great draft, which made me grade them pretty high. I gave them an A.
I'm going to go A-. And as much as I didn't like that first pick, when you have 6 or 7 guys behind that are good value, fit needs, great players as well, you did well in the draft. That's why I can't criticize the Giants too much.
You literally have 3 to 4 starters, maybe day 1 after your first pick.
You got to call that a success, right?
Yeah, absolutely, you do.
All right, let's move on and talk about the Jets next. Quinnen Williams, defensive tackle out of Alabama. They didn't mess it up, right?
No.
You had him at number 2 to the 49ers.
The 49ers messed up.
No.
This is the best player in the defense side of this draft. This guy is a difference maker. I get it. You can have all the knocks about what the 49ers did in the last couple of rounds, but you don't pass up on talent like this. Quinnen Williams is huge. It's the best pick they could have done. Jets scored huge on this pick.
Scott's going back towards Daniel Jones here really quick and saying, wasn't he a Manning comparison player?
Yes.
Or Manning camp player, I should say. He was a little bit, but I think that's a little bit unfair.
He's actually trained by the quarterback coach that trained both Peyton and Eli Manning.
Right. And I think the comparisons to Eli Manning, I've heard a lot of that, are unfair. I think they kind of look similar, so people want to draw those conclusions that they play similar games. I don't think that's entirely true. I think Eli's actually more accurate coming out of college and everything like that. I don't want to sit there and say that the same level
I'm not
talent.
comparing the two at all by any means, but they are coached by the same guy.
Quinnen Williams, though, going to the Jets. I was kind of surprised by this. I thought it was going to be Josh Allen. I thought they needed more help on the edge, but I agree with you. I think this is the best player in the draft, and it doesn't matter what you need, right?
Agrees with me. He said he had Williams going number 2 to San Francisco.
Well, you know what? You were both wrong. So I don't
Brian,
know how to
we're
tell
not
you that.
wrong.
I
We're
was
not
too.
wrong.
But
We're not wrong.
Look, let me say this. I thought he was the best player in this draft. Okay? Across any position. I think this is the best player in the draft. But he doesn't fit the needs of some of these other teams, so that's why I didn't have him as high. I had him going to 4 or something. What a huge drop, right?
I don't blame you for what you did in
my
your mock
only
draft.
mistake is picking Oakland to take the right move and take Quinnen Williams if he falls. Didn't happen.
I think they would have. But you know what, though?
I don't. I think it was Cleveland Farrell. It doesn't matter who fell to him.
Unfortunately for the Jets, besides their next pick, Polite, they didn't really have that great of a draft. They really didn't.
But even Polite, he had terrible pro
and
days,
that's what I'm
terrible
saying.
combine.
Polite-
For a guy that had 1 year in college
Polite's
to have
like
terrible
average.
pro days.
It's like an
and
average
to be
pick, yeah.
I mean, he played at 230 in college from the defensive end. If you're playing at 230 pounds in the NFL, historically, it does not go very well for you at the defensive end position. So a third-round pick, I'm still calling it a plus because you're getting a guy that, yes, he has upside. He had that great year at Florida, I believe as a senior, might have been as a junior, and he had that one big year of worth of production. The problem is going into the NFL, you're very light. You're very easy to move. I just don't see him succeeding at the next level. A third-round pick is worth spending on him, Drew, but I can't sit there and tell you, like, hey, man, they got a steal. They got a great guy, right?
No, you're right. And before I grade the Jets in this draft, I want you to know it's very heavily graded towards their very first pick. But I want you to know a lot of the Jets, what they've done this offseason is in free agency. Because Williams is going to sit next to the other Williams. Behind that, you're going to have C.J. Mosley. Behind that, you're going to have your 2 safeties in Adams and May. And you're talking about hopefully turns that Jets defense around. You know, I'm very high on the Jets defense last year that let me down.
Well, we were both high on him. I think we both had him winning 7 or 8 games because of the defense.
Spoiler alert, I'm going to have that defense high again before we talk about their record. Not saying it's a winning record.
He's a big Greg Williams believer. But that's okay.
No, I'm high on the talent the Jets
what do you mean, no?
around.
Greg Williams is a good defensive coordinator.
But that's not it. The talent's what it is. So, giving that thing, Quinnen Williams, in my opinion, the best player in this draft, I give the Jets a B+.
I'm going to go B-. And another reason I'm going to have as a negative, I think Chuma Edoga, offensive tackle out of USC, was a bit of a reach. I don't think he's that good of a player. I think USC, when you look at the way they played, he was not exactly a bright spot for them, and they had a very down year. If you're going to have that down of a year in college and you're not going to be a bright spot on the roster, I think that's kind of a negative as well. I think the Jets kind of reached a little bit on offensive linemen in the third round. Sounds a little strange saying they're reaching on a guy, but I just don't think he's that valuable of a player. The rest of the draft was not spectacular. I'm going to go B-. Quinnen Williams saves the day, and Ja'Kai Polite, hey, he's one of those guys that maybe he works out. You're drafting on what-ifs at that point.
You're expecting a lot out of him.
Let's talk Oakland next. Let's get into the juicy one here, Drew. The one everyone's been waiting to talk about. The guys that should have been able to win this draft pretty handily, right? Let me answer that for you. When you got this kind of ammo, yeah, you should win the draft. 3 first-round picks and a high second.
Okay, hold on. Let's just pump the brakes before we start ripping Oakland apart.
Well, I'm not ripping Oakland apart. Actually, I'm not ripping Oakland apart. I lied.
2 of their 3 picks, they arguably picked the best player in that position.
I disagree. Not on my board. And that's okay.
Arguably is the word I
take it
used.
back. At least one. I don't think Jonathan Abrams is the best safety.
I said arguably.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess you could argue anyone's the best at their
you
position.
cannot. No.
Here's the thing. Cleveland Farrell is not one of those guys. When you're going to spend the 4th overall pick on a defensive end, Cleveland Farrell is just simply not the guy. Okay? Josh Allen sitting right there looking you in the face.
You take him.
A guy with 17 and a half sacks.
No one knows what exactly it was.
Exactly.
I think 17 and a half.
When you say no one, you mean we don't.
No,
specifically.
multiple people keep saying 17 and a half, 18. We'll just go 17 and a half. It's in the middle.
Absolutely. I think, look, Cleveland Farrell is a good player, but when you're spending the 4th pick, just like I criticized the Giants, I got to criticize the Raiders here. When you're spending that high of a pick, you can't afford to take a good player. You need a great player. You need an elite player. You need a franchise player. You need a Khalil Mack, all right? And you traded him for nothing. Oh, I say that, but it's not nothing. They traded him.
Might be.
Keep this in mind. You gave up Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack for everything that I'm about to talk about, okay? Right. So try to think about that when we're talking about the draft.
We're not we can't do that.
Do you want to bag on Cleveland Farrell, or do you want to sit there and can I move on to Josh Jacobs next?
No, it's wrong. This is the wrong pick at number 4. Let's be completely honest.
Well, this is 24 now. Let's talk Josh Jacobs. You had him going in the first round of the Packers. Are you okay with this?
Yeah, he's the best player in that position.
Yeah, but he's not like overly good. Like he played 30% of the snaps at Alabama.
Where's their need?
If he was
Look
that
what
good,
they got. They got Marshawn Lynch retired.
You don't
they
draft
got
on
Doug
need
Martin,
if you're
who
a good
is literally
team.
on his last leg. You grab.
Okay, Isaiah Crowell got hurt today. So before he got hurt, you didn't know he was
never
hurt.
going to be your starter.
No, but he was going to be an influencer. Absolutely. You have Jalen Richard, who's also a running back. So you're telling me
going into the second year of your contract as Gruden is, you're going to sit there and tell me it's okay to have Doug Martin and Crowell as your
When I have a
backs.
10-year contract, yeah, it's okay to have anyone because I got 8 more years. There's nothing you can do about it. But here's the biggest thing. You don't go and reach on a running back like Josh Jacobs because there's so many other things your team could use. You could have used a corner here. You could have gone any other direction, basically. You could have taken a wide receiver and got one of the top guys off the board there. You could have got an offensive lineman to shore up that offensive line. You could have gone pretty much anywhere else, and I would have been cool with it. The problem is Josh Jacobs played 30% of the snaps at Alabama. They didn't really believe in him at Alabama, even though he had some impact. He's not a bad player, but when a guy's playing 30% of the snaps in college, he is not going to be elite. I just don't believe in him. I really don't. I think he's going to be an okay to good player in the NFL, but when it comes to a first-round pick, you can't sit there and say that's the best thing you could take.
He's the best player in that position.
But not that they could have taken
Scott
at 24.
says that that the Raiders should have took Josh Allen. He said at 4th that was the right pick. Brian also said Marshawn Lynch said he'll come out of retirement if Oakland wants him.
I don't think anyone wants that to happen.
Why do you want him?
Well, that's the thing. As much as you're criticizing Doug Martin, he is the better option than Marshawn Lynch at this point, right?
No, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this draft. I get it. They need a running back help.
Those
But the talent isn't there. Good teams don't draft on what they need. They draft on where the talent is. I just don't believe this kid was a first-round pick. I see him as more of like a late second, early third-round pick. And they spent pick 24 on him when they have so many other needs. If you were a complete team and you reached, it'd be okay. If you were the Saints and you're like a running back gets us to the Super Bowl, you take the running back. The problem is Oakland's not anywhere near the Super Bowl. They have 2 teams that are super teams in their division. You need to get the best player available that's going to help you win games. Josh Jacobs is not going to move the needle very much in any direction.
But guess what?
They took him, I know.
No. They don't have to worry about that at least for 3 to 4 years.
They do, because he played 30% of the snaps. You're not even sure what you have in him. He might be a spell back.
You're getting a young back with not a lot of tread off the tires.
Okay, but he might not be that good. And when he's not that good, they're going to be drafting a running back in a year or 2.
Well, I don't think he's going to be that good because Oakland sucks. But beyond that, we'll just move forward from it.
All right, let's talk about Jonathan Abrams. Safety out of Mississippi State. I like him. I like the player. I don't think he's the first safety off the board. I don't think he's the best safety in the class, like everyone said. No, I know, and I'm not sitting there pointing fingers at you. I'm saying I just don't think this pick, again, when you've got some of these other guys out there, and when you see guys... I know we're talking hindsight here a little bit, but when you have some of these safeties slip into the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, that you could have taken Chauncey Gardner-Johnson here. You could have taken the safety the Titans took, whose name I'm drawing a blank on, Hooker. You could have taken any one of those guys late round and been okay with it. Jonathan Abrams, I don't really believe him to be that much better than another guy that he needs to be a first-round pick. Yeah, I get it. They need a safety, or arguably that's probably where they were one of the best positions they had.
Yeah.
So this is a reach. Again, another reach for me. I get what you're saying. People that want to defend Oakland are saying that it's worth it because they needed one, and he might be the best at his position, even though he's probably not. Here's the reverse of that coin. He's probably not, right? Would he be your first safety? Is Jonathan Abrams the first guy you take? Especially with a draft this deep? Yeah, so they kind of reached here. Let's talk about Tavon Mullen, cornerback out of Clemson. Again, with all these other cornerbacks on the board, you're going to take Tavon Mullen, a guy that, I get it, he played at Clemson, and John Gruden's got a hard-on for those guys, but he wasn't anything spectacular. You've got guys like Oruwariye falling into the 5th round. You have other guys, Love. You have other guys, I'm drawing a blank right now, but you have Greedy Williams falling into the same area. It's all over the board. You're going to take Tavon Mullen before these guys. It's a huge reach for me. I just don't see it, man. I don't see it. And everyone's going to sit there and say Oakland took 2 of the best 3 in their first round for their position. That's just not true. It's just not. No, to everyone that knows what they're talking about and watches any college football, it's just not true. But
so that being said,
let's talk about one guy I do like. Because I want to balance it out. Oakland fans are going to hate me. I'm not even the Chiefs fan, and Oakland fans are going to hate me here, okay? I want to talk about one guy I did like. Hunter Renfrow, okay?
Okay.
This guy was also out of Clemson, and I know they got way too many of these Clemson guys out of this draft.
Clemson had one of the best defenses.
He's a receiver. He's not helping on the defense.
Well, I'm just saying.
I get it. They took a lot of Clemson guys.
Came out.
Okay. They took a lot of Clemson guys, okay? I actually like Hunter Renfrow in the 5th round. He's a grinder. He's a guy that's going to make things happen. He's not the most physically talented guy in the world, but he's one of those guys that it doesn't matter what it takes. He gets something. He makes something happen. He makes something out of nothing. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Jordy Nelson in that respect, where he's not the most physically gifted, but he's a guy who just makes stuff happen, or maybe even Julian Edelman. I know it's not fair because they're all white, and everyone wants to sit there and say I'm saying this is just another white receiver, but I do like this pick. I think you can give them a little bit of value. It's another weapon for Derek Carr, so I'm okay with that in the 5th round.
So let's hear the love that you give Oakland.
That was it. Good job in that 5th round pick.
Grade.
D+. Because Cleveland Farrell is not a bust, okay? Cleveland Farrell's going to be a good player, but at pick 4, you need a great player. Josh Jacobs is not a bust, but at pick 24, you need a very good player. I think he's just okay to good. Jonathan Abrams, not a great player necessarily, but he could be good, okay? So none of these guys are like huge busts that I think they just swung and missed. But when you talk about value, when you talk about what you should have got with 3 first-round picks and a high second, it's more than this, okay? That's why I got to sit there and say you failed. This was a failure.
I give him a B-. And I'll tell you right now why I give him a B- is Farrell...
Because you can't agree with me on anything.
No, not at all. Farrell wasn't the right choice at the time. But like you said, he is going to be a good player. Jacobs, considered the best running back in this draft. You take him, you need it, it's a need, you take it. When you look at Jonathan Abram, maybe he won't be the best safety, but guess what you need? You need safety help. And if that's the guy that you have high on your board, you take him. So when I look at 1, 2, and 3 on these picks, these are all needs that you need. Wide receiver help, you took care of that in free agency. You have a quarterback. So in your offensive line, yeah, you might have won in there and jumped in there, and that's why I didn't really give it an A. But when you take these picks and hopefully they pan out for Oakland fans, you got to give it a B- because I think they focused on their needs.
Well, that's the thing. Good teams, you don't focus on need. You focus on where's the best player I'm going to get. And when you're Oakland, that could be anywhere and you're helping the team out. That's why I got to go lower than
everything's
that.
a need?
You take the best available player. Yeah, you don't reach on guys. All right, Drew. That's
You're
okay.
the only one saying you reach. You're the only one.
Oh, yeah, so Cleveland Farrell at 4. You're cool with that. No. I just want to go on record that Drew is cool with the Cleveland Farrell at 4.
I said that was wrong. No,
that's what I thought.
I said that was wrong. Jacobs and Abram was not a reach.
I appreciate it. I'm not a reach. Not a reach to you? No, I'm kidding. Moving forward, let's talk about Philadelphia. Andre Dillard, offensive tackle. How do you feel about that?
Hold on. Brian says he would have picked Harris over Jacobs. Pat's got the better running back.
My thing is they got much better value. When you're talking about a third-round pick and you're getting a guy who, even if Jacobs is the better guy, how big is the gap? They believed in Harris enough to sit there and let him run about 25 or 30% of the snaps through Alabama's running game. So, yeah, I absolutely think the Patriots got the better end of the deal because they spent a third-round pick and got basically what Oakland got with pick 24.
And Scott also said, players are also going to get coached. It's all about potential.
But I don't believe that. Not as much. I get what you're saying. Yes, some guys you're going to influence, but these guys have played football for their entire lives. You're not going to take a lemon and turn them into anything else at this point. I think when you look at it, and I don't think any of these guys are lemons. They're good players. But you can't sit there and tell me that I'm going to take Cleveland Farrell and coach him up better than a guy like Nick Bosa or Josh Allen out of Kentucky that have all the physical skills that need coaching as well. If you're that good of a coach, go take the best player and then coach him up and turn him into the best thing you can. That's part of where my criticism comes from, Scott.
Well, let's go into Philadelphia.
All right, let's talk about it. Andre Dillard, offensive tackle, like I said, out of Washington State. It's going to be a great pass protector, probably the best pass protector. And when you've got Carson Wentz, a guy that can't stay on the field, can't stay healthy, this is the right pick, right? You've got Jason Peters' successor, who, again, another guy that has not been able to stay healthy.
No, absolutely. And not only that, they go ahead and pick up a couple other needs that they need, and they need a wide receiver. And one of your guys that you're really high on,
This is my guy.
Ortega-Whiteside. And, there's a lot of rough edges around this guy, but he's just one of those go-getter kind of players. He doesn't play with a lot of speed, but his route running's better than most. And you want something like that. They also went out and got Miles Sanders, running back, in the second round before JJ. And everyone's going to sit there and say, Jordan Howard, why'd you go off and trade for him? But Miles Sanders is a need. Guess what? You had 0 run game in Philadelphia. You need as many backs as you can. Jordan Howard, as much as I think he's going to improve that run game, he is not your every down back. You need someone to allow him to rest because he's proven he can't take the load.
And I think they jumped the gun a little bit with Sanders. I'm not going to sit there and say it's too critical, especially when you have a great team like Philadelphia. You're allowed taking those picks that, hey, we like this guy. We think he's going to develop. That's okay. I love Arcega-Whiteside. I think he's the best receiver. He's my best receiver from a pure, how much influence is he going to have in the NFL standpoint. I think he's going to turn into someone like Mike Evans that, he's not the fastest guy in the world. He doesn't generate the separation that some other receivers do.
He's not as tall as Mike Evans either.
Well, he jumps like it. I mean, this guy might be the best high point guy in the entire draft. He's a guy that goes up and gets the ball. I think, worst case scenario, you got another Alshon Jeffrey here where you just throw it up to him and those 50-50 balls turn into 80-20 because he's so good at high pointing. I love that pick in the second round especially. I think that was really good. I had him as a first-round pick. I had him Washington taking him. Yeah. I think Sanders was a little bit ahead of schedule when they took him out in the second round. But I love Andre Dillard as well. Nothing in the late rounds really surprised me too much for Philadelphia, but I think they did okay. I'm going to give them a B. When I look at this draft, they were pretty solid. They got you need offensive line because you got to keep Carson Wentz healthy. You need wide receivers because he needs weapons to throw to. Sanders and Arcega-Whiteside should make an impact on the offense. I like where they're going.
I like Andre. I like JJ. Sanders, even if he's a little bit of a reach, it makes sense. I give him a B+.
Now, Brian's also saying Eagles B+ as well, so he's kind of on the same track as you. I'm not far behind. Let's talk Pittsburgh next. What do you say?
Sounds good.
Devin Bush, the big trade up. Now, I partially like this move because you kept a good player like Devin Bush from going to a division rival in Cincinnati because I think we all think...
All knew.
Yeah, Devin Bush is going at 11, right? We're pretty sure that it's going to be Devin Bush.
Yeah, that's what I had him. I think you had him also in your mock draft. There's no doubt about it. The trade was absolutely the right time.
This is the worst kept draft secret.
This defense has not been the same since Ryan Shazier had his injury. It's definitely huge. But you know what? The Pittsburgh didn't stop wheeling and dealing. They kept moving and picking great players. I love the Justin Lane corner pick. I absolutely love it where they got the value of him. They need a corner. Then again, Steven Nelson, in my opinion, is not a starter in the NFL. He's okay at nickel and dime, but you don't start him.
And Deontay Johnson, wide receiver out of Toledo. Again, there were a lot of receivers that dropped in this draft. I feel like they could have done something to get one of those other guys. So I'm not crazy about him. Maybe he turns into something because Big Ben has a history of taking these guys that are quote-unquote no-name players or are not well-known going into it, like your Antonio Browns, like your Nate Washingtons, and turning them into great receivers. So maybe he's that next best guy, but for right now, I think that was a bit of ahead of schedule. Justin Lane, though, I love this pick, cornerback out of Michigan State. When we talk about like guys that I like, this guy gave up like 18 catches in his entire senior year there at Michigan State.
It's a huge,
18 catches. He doesn't generate interceptions like some other guys do, but when you talk about keeping the ball out of the opponent's hands,
your huge
creating
thing right here.
breakups and everything, this is the guy, right?
This is the love that you give every corner. Every time you talk about corners, it's not about tackles. It's about not allowing
the receiver
to catch the ball.
Exactly. And that's what the Steelers went and got here. Like you said, they did. Steven Nelson, not going to be a long-term cornerback for them. I think that was more of a necessity than necessarily something they wanted to make happen. That's why I like this pick, because I think day one, he might be able to compete for that job and oust Nelson out of that second starting spot.
I got to give the Pittsburgh Steelers a B+, but beyond that note, man,
I'm going to go C+. I'm a lower.
The bathroom is calling me, and I have to pee.
No, feel free. I mean, you've had a lot of beer. I'll carry it from here. Don't worry, Drew. Plenty of room on these shoulders.
Just let me, when you
just
get
like
done,
Devin Bush, plenty of room on these shoulders.
When you get done talking about the 49ers, all I want to do is give them a grade.
That's fine.
I'll make it quick.
Well, Seattle's next, but that's okay. We're going to talk about Pittsburgh and why I gave him a C+ while Drew is running off taking care of nature's calling. I want to talk about Devin Bush. When they traded up to get this guy, look, I think this is good value here. They needed an inside linebacker, no doubt, since Shazier was gone. I can't sit there and criticize him, right? I mean, they took the guy that they absolutely needed because it was a need. but they gave up a lot to get it. They traded up with the Broncos, who smartly traded down and brought on extra picks. The question to me is going to be, does inside linebacker matter enough to make it worth it? Jason also says he made it 3 hours through Endgame. I'm proud of you, man. I know. Drew's just got a weak bladder, I guess. I don't know what to tell you. I think every Marvel fan made it through Endgame. Going back to the Steelers, though. Devin Bush is a great player. I think he's going to be very good. I think Devin White is the better linebacker of the two. But I think them getting him is kind of a double-edged sword. They gave up a lot to get a guy that, if you look at the analytics, if you look at what a lot of numbers guys sit there and say, inside linebacker is not the most important position in the NFL, and they gave up a lot to take that position. But they got a heck of a player at a position that is very thin, because if you look at inside linebacker, there were the two Devons. After that, you have a significant drop-off. Nobody on there is absolutely a guy you must have, because, or even should have. I don't think there was a draft pick. I believe there was one in the second round towards the end of it, but none of these guys could even hold a candle to him. I know Mack Wilson was talked about as a first-round pick. He didn't wind up going till the 5th. So for them to go get the other inside linebacker and to keep him from going to a team like Cincinnati in division for a position they absolutely need, I give them credit for that. I think it was a chess move. I think it was one of those things they said, even though we're trading down, we're keeping a weapon out of a division opponent's hands. The problem is they got a great offensive tackle out of Jonah Williams there instead. So that early in the draft, I think Pittsburgh probably should have hung back, not traded up for the linebacker, and said, we'll just make it another year before we take that next great inside linebacker. Well, look who it is. Back again. Moving forward, let's talk about Seattle, though, Drew. Let's talk about L.J. Collier, a guy I did not have this high in the draft.
Hold on. How did we skip the San Francisco 49ers?
Well, I have him afterward. S.E. comes before S.F., if that makes sense. You know, A, B, C, D, E,
S.A.
F.
In?
Well, that's not how they abbreviate their name. So San Fran, S.F., goes afterwards, after Seattle.
Jason, I'm glad you could join us. I know I'm a little late, but you talk Seattle.
Also, really quick, Jason, yes, I do play chess. I'm not sure. I do. I mean, it's a chess move. I know how to play chess. I wouldn't sit there and say I'm a grandmaster, but I know how to play chess, yeah.
So you talk Seattle. You gave him a bad grade.
Well, I haven't gone through it yet, but yeah, spoil it for me, please.
No, I just know. I know you.
All right, well, L.J. Collier, TCU defensive end. How do you feel about him?
He doesn't excite me.
Okay. Let's move on. Marquise Blair, safety out of Utah. How do you feel about him?
Doesn't excite me.
All right, DK Metcalf out of Ole Miss. How do you feel about him?
I like it.
I do too. Let's move on.
So the biggest
Cody
thing,
Barton, outside linebacker out of Utah. How do you feel about that?
The biggest thing.
They just rated Utah. I mean, that's it.
I want you to know, 4 picks turned into 11 picks. What did you say before this draft that Seattle needs to do?
Well, I didn't criticize their draft strategy because that was a masterstroke. Them, like we talked about when Russell Wilson got his big contract, they need to add more players through the draft because you're not going to be able to afford guys when you're paying a quarterback that kind of money. So I'm with you there. The problem is you also need to convert on these draft picks, and I'm kind of scratching my head on some of these guys here, Drew.
Well, guess what? Pete Carroll has done since he's gotten to Seattle. He has nailed.
Run off a lot of good players like Earl Thomas.
He has nailed on these late round picks, and I'm not saying these guys are it. But you can't sit there and hate it. They went from 4 picks to 11 picks. They picked up one of the best wide receivers in this draft. Definitely a huge need. All these no-name players that we're not really huge on, those are the players that Cam Chancellor was. Those are huge players that Earl Thomas was.
And Nate's following my kind of sense of logic here. He said he wanted Metcalf so bad there in Green Bay. I had Green Bay taking him at pick 12. I really thought when he fell to them, that was going to be the pick. Yeah. I was shocked to see him fall this far. I guess that cone drill is more important to the NFL than everybody thought. When you have worse agility than Tom Brady and you play wide receiver, I guess it's enough to make GM sit there and say, maybe we can take somebody else.
That being said, I love Seattle's draft. I think they did the right thing. We'll see what happens with these players being panned out. I'm gonna grade this draft based on their strategic movement on gaining more draft picks. And hopefully maybe some of these guys will pan out, but I give them an A-.
And I love the strategy. I just don't think you executed the second half of that strategy, which is draft good players with those picks. Again, nobody in the back end excited me. L.J. Collier doesn't excite me at 1. Marquise Blair doesn't excite me in the second round. DK Metcalf is the shining star here. That's why they go C-. I think they did a good job bringing on DK Metcalf, but when you look at some of these other guys, when you look at some of the guys on the board, like Marquise Blair going in the second round, you can go another direction there. I think this is a rare misstep out of Seattle, but who knows? Maybe these guys are developmental guys. Maybe it's Pete Carroll's guys that he handpicks and says, I can turn them into players. I just don't know why they went to Utah as a school and said, we need like everybody off this team.
Brian's going to give Seattle a B. And Jason's, I guess he's got some high stats on chess.com.
Well, you probably beat me. I'm not trying to flex on anybody, Jason. I know how to play, but
I'll beat you in 3 moves. No.
Okay.
No.
Grandmaster Drew over here.
You didn't know about that?
Moving forward, let's talk San Francisco.
Who's at number 1? That's me.
Whose SF abbreviation puts them behind Seattle, Drew, just so we're clear. Let's talk about Nick Bosa being the 2nd overall pick. I know you weren't crazy about this, but they needed to get the edge rusher. This came down, like you've been saying all draft, to need versus overall skill, because if Quinnen Williams was that much better than Nick Bosa, I'd say go take Quinnen Williams. But we're talking about 1 and 1A and 1B and 1C. These guys are really good at the top end of the draft.
They are.
So Nick Bosa going to you number 2 overall, when you've had a problem setting the edge, I think is fine. I think Solomon Thomas on the inside is okay.
I don't hate it.
I think DeForest Buckner on the inside is fantastic. You've got the inside guys, so go take the guy you don't have there when you're getting great players at every spot. That's the caveat.
I don't hate it.
You hate it.
But it's the wrong move. You don't pass on some player like Quinnen Williams. Don't get me wrong, Nick Bosa will probably be great. He'll probably be a Pro Bowler, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years. But who knows how long he can last? I mean, he's got injury issues. It's already proven in college. He didn't have a will to play a lot. I mean, he sits there and goes, "Well, I was waiting for the NFL to make my money." But you know what? All these players that have played and lived through the NFL and played multiple years, also played multiple years in college and played every down that they possibly could because they love the game of football. I'm not going to sit there and say that Nick Bosa doesn't love football because I don't know that. I'm sure he does. I'm sure he puts every thought and process into it, but that throws up red flags for me. It really honestly does. You didn't want to play the rest of your career in Ohio State? Why not, man? You got teammates that rely on you to be there. You're healthy. Play. I get it.
That's a fair criticism, but I think part of it was the money was calling his name, and he knew, hey, I've done enough. Kind of like we said about Zion, right?
Same thing about Joey. And guess what? He's missed a couple games.
And that's true in the NFL. Maybe money is kind of a motivating factor for these brothers. I don't know about that, but we kind of said the same thing about Zion. Like, why would you come back to Duke? Even when he got hurt. Why would you come back to college when you know you're going to be a high draft pick in the NFL or the NBA, respectively? I think he just chased the siren's call of the dollar versus, Zion, who said, I want to play for the love of the game.
Jason likes him. He said he called Kaepernick a clown, and he's a Trump supporter.
That's true. He's going to have a hard time out there in the San Francisco Bay. He also said that when he was
like 18. So,
well, what is he now? Like 21, 22?
Yeah, 18, 19. I'm just saying. I mean, from
there's not a lot of development.
Hold on, from 18 to 21 is huge.
I was the same jerk from 18 to 28.
You still are.
I'm not even 28 yet, but hey, that's cool.
You're still a jerk.
Let's talk about Deebo Samuel next, though. A guy that I'm going to be a jerk to, and I'm going to sit there and say, this wasn't a second-round pick. I mean, I get what they're saying. They want fast and small receivers to play in Kyle Shanahan's offense. I understand that, but you have a lot of those guys already. I mean, you have guys that kind of fit that same mold. You could have gone in a lot of other directions, brought in a lot of different types of receivers, and got better receivers than Deebo Samuel is, even though I like Deebo Samuel, with that second-round pick. I mean, the 4th overall pick in the draft, Drew, DK Metcalf was still up there. They could have taken like one of the best deep threats. They could have taken.
But I do like.
They could have taken even a guy like Kelvin Harmon who fell into the 5th or 6th round.
I do like their their 3rd pick, Jalen Hurts.
Do you?
I do. I don't dislike it. I think it's another big-bodied receiver. It's another guy that can move the chains. I don't think he's going to blow the top off anybody, but I think he's good.
Well, he has the size. I worry about his injury. I've watched a lot of Jalen Hurts. He went to high school, actually, around the area we live in, so I've seen plenty of him, even all the way through college when he went to Tennessee. The problem I have with Jalen Hurts is he's a quitter. When Alvin Kamara came in and beat him out at Tennessee, he quit on the team. He transferred the year before Kamara was drafted. And
Nick Bosa's a quitter.
Well, Nick Bosa's a lot better than Jalen Hurts. If you're going to be a quitter, you might as well be good. My point is, you're getting a guy who's not necessarily the most talented. He switched positions multiple times. There was talk about him playing safety, talk about him playing tight end. He was running back, I believe, as a junior in college. Now he's a wide receiver, and you're spending a 3rd-round pick on this guy. I have it as a minus. I don't think it's the worst pick in the world, but I have questions about his attitude. I have questions about his ability to play at wide receiver. The only thing he has is that height, weight, speed you want to see out of position players, and hope that Kyle Shanahan is a good enough coach that you're going to be able to make an influence here.
And I think this is the next pick that we're about to talk about that makes John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan not like each other. Of all the rumors have said, they drafted a punter in the 4th round.
I'm okay with that. Hear me out here. Hear me out here. It's a reach.
You were just talking
about... I know. I understand. But when you don't have a punter, or when things aren't going right in the punting game, how big of an influence is here?
You bring him in as free agents.
Not if you want the best one.
And
when you're not a good team, here's the thing. When you're not a good team, you got to win on special teams. But I'm a Titans fan, Drew. I know what it means to have to win on special teams.
Suck up as your kicker, okay? That's an ex-Kansas City
team. From like 48 and in. Look, here's the thing. They also have Brent Kern, who, you know what, is a pretty fantastic punter. Look, I get what you're saying. A 4th-round pick is an expensive pick to spend on a punter. If the kid is that good, and I'm gonna be the first one to admit here, I didn't scout punters this year, okay? I didn't scout the special teams. I didn't do kicking. I didn't do punting. So I don't know. I really don't know anything about this guy. But if he's that good, if you're getting a guy that is going to be a top 5, top 10 pick at punter, it's okay to spend a 4th-round pick and be one of the best teams at punting, especially when you look at this offense and the way they've struggled for the past few years to keep their quarterback healthy. If you're going to win games, you got to do some more creative stuff. That's why I'm okay with it. Not because I love taking punters in the 4th round, but because when I look at the San Francisco 49ers, I'm like, there were probably a bunch of games when the offensive side of the ball was struggling. They could have used better field position.
So no will be the correct answer. When you take a punter in the 4th round, you're sitting there saying you don't believe in your offense. You're going to fully believe in your defense.
I don't think they believe in Jimmy G staying on the field for 16 games.
Oh, come on, man.
Well, that's happened like, what, 3 times?
He was making a football move down the sideline. He didn't get hurt in the pocket. I agree that he needs to stay healthy.
And what about when he was the year before that when he was with the Patriots?
He only missed 1 game.
He missed more than that.
He missed a game and a half. He got injured.
More than that. That was multiple years ago.
No, he did.
He did not play a full season for San Fran.
No, you're right. Okay, whatever. Anyways.
And you're the injury guy here on the show. So, Drew, I hate to have to lecture you here on your own talk, but
listen.
Look, field
taking
position
a punter in the
important.
4th round is literally saying I don't believe in my offense. I believe I have to give my defense a chance to get the ball behind the halfway mark and sit there and hold them back and let them punt towards them. That is literally what you're saying in this pick. I don't blame Kyle Shanahan being mad at Justin Lynch for a 4th-round pick for a punter.
Well, I don't mind him being mad at Lynch.
I'm not saying that's
John Lynch for anything. I really, I don't think John Lynch has done a fantastic job to this point. But I don't think the punter is the thing it's not the straw that breaks the camel's back here,
It
Drew.
was for me.
Was it? Look, would you have been better if it was a kicker?
It would make more sense. They put up points.
And Robbie Gould apparently wants to hold out from signing a tender with them. So
I don't blame him for leaving either.
That's strange. All right, Drew, let's grade it, man. I know they took a punter with a 4th-round pick, but I'm still giving him a C. Joey Bosa saved this. Again, I think this is the pick. I think it's the right pick because they needed help at that position. You're getting a guy who may not be as good as Quinnen Williams, but is close enough that it doesn't matter. You go take the position you need at that point.
I give him a C+, as much as I don't agree.
You crapped on the draft, and you give him a higher grade than me.
Right? I don't dislike the Bosa pick as much as I think Quinnen Williams is a better player, and I think they focused on their needs with their next 2 picks, Samuel and Hurd, regardless of what they are. It was a need. Wide receiver's a need.
All right, 3 more. Let's power through this. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Tampa Bay. This is going to be, spoiler alert, the worst draft grade I'm giving out of anybody.
Where's
and
Will?
It starts with Devin White. Oh, believe me, I'm going to clip this and send it to him. Devin White. I love this player, okay? But when pick 5 rolls around, and you're licked, and you're the GM for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you have to take the pass rusher when you have 32-year-old, several finger missing JPP as the only impactful player.
That's a low blow.
At the defensive end position. So you take Josh Allen here. That is my biggest minus in this draft. Not because Devin White is not a fantastic player. He certainly is. But you need edge rushers like crazy, and you're going to pass on the second best one in the entire draft when you're talking about having an elite grade, who might be the 3rd or 4th best player in the entire draft, and you're going to take a middle linebacker. That, to me, is still a minus. Even though I love Devin White, he's my best middle linebacker in a very thin position. You got to go another way, Drew. You can't sit there and take him at 5 and just say, we're sticking to the plan.
My turn?
Yes, your turn.
This guy was their number 1 guy on their draft board. It was the guy that they were targeting at all times. They were like, if we fall to him at number 5, this is the guy we take.
They got hypnotized.
This is it. You can sit there and say that all you want, but it's the truth. If you sit there and go through your scouting reports and you sit there and go through all your film and you go, this is a guy that we fall in love with, you take that guy. There's no doubt about it. You take that guy. I'm sorry. That's just it.
Here's the thing.
All the criticism that I gave them, and trust me, I gave Kansas City all the criticism when they moved up and took Patrick Mahomes, when he was being considered, late first round, late second round kind of talent. And I was like, you traded up, gave first round pick, and look what he panned out to be. But I'm not calling him the next big guy.
No. Here's the thing. I don't even want to talk about Patrick Mahomes. I want to talk about rose-colored glasses because that worked out fantastic. And when you use that as an example, it kind of slants things a little bit. Let's talk about Paxton Lynch when they said, this is our guy, and we took him, and Denver took him. Exactly. You need to do the scouting. That's what it comes down to. When you have a great player who is a top 3 player in this draft, you take Josh Allen here.
As much as you love Drew
Daniel
Lock.
Jones, because he's a nice guy.
As much as you love Drew Lock.
Who says I love Drew Lock?
You had him going to the Broncos.
I did, but in the second round.
I don't see.
I didn't say I love him.
I don't think Elway can develop quarterbacks well. I don't think he can see the talent.
Well, I don't think that's Elway's job. And okay, all right, that'll give you the point. You said you don't think he can develop them. The GM doesn't develop anybody. The coach develops
quarterbacks
people.
that develop into great quarterbacks.
Okay, if you want to sit there and say he's not good at picking quarterbacks, I'm on board. Okay, I'm all on that train. Here's the problem I have here, though. Devin White, great player. Okay, so I'm not really that upset with this pick, but you have to go with a top 3 guy when he falls to you at 5.
When you tell me that
we said there were 3 elite players, right? We said there were, Nick Bosa, Quinnen Williams, Josh Allen.
Absolutely.
So when he falls to you, you take the elite player and you don't sit there and worry about you don't put the blinders on, because that's what Tampa Bay did. They said, we love Devin White, we're taking him no matter what happens, because they knew he was going to be there, right? And if everything goes to plan and Josh Allen is gone at 4 and they take him at 5, I say good job. But when things don't, you need to be able to adjust, and they did not do that. And that is, to me, the biggest complaint I have. Look, this is a good player, okay? You still got a great guy. He's still going to be good. Everyone's going to look back on this and say, hey, good job. The only thing I can say is I hope Josh Allen's a bust for Tampa Bay's sake, because if not, if Josh Allen turns into a 12.5, 13 sack a year guy, you done messed up. That's all I can say. I mean, you blew it.
I'm gonna stop arguing with you because
wise choice.
No, because I agree with you. I agree with you that Josh Allen was the pick that should have been taken. I agree with you that when we graded all of our drafts, 1, 2, and 3, Josh Allen fell at 3.
Mm-hmm.
And Devin White did not. And as much as I think that was the right choice, I can't blame Tampa Bay for taking Devin White, because it's definitely a huge need. It's huge. I'm this is gonna go against everything I've ever said about a lot of picks. But you want to be a head coach in the NFL and you want to keep your job, you don't draft for need. You draft the best player on your board.
Absolutely. I agree.
And did they mess up? Yeah, they did. But did they get a crappy player when they messed up?
No.
Did they pull an Oakland Raiders taking Cleveland Farrell?
But no.
Cleveland.
No, they did not. I know.
Cleveland Farrell.
I know. You're going to struggle with that for a while, but sorry.
They didn't make that mess. They didn't make that mess happen.
No.
They did not.
But
so sitting there and knocking this pick, you can't do it. And I know you're not. I know you're not knocking this pick, but you can't knock it. You can't.
I'm knocking the pick for what could have been. It's opportunity cost. What could have been. They didn't make the right choice. We'll move on, though. We don't necessarily have to agree here. Let's talk Sean Bunting next.
Hold on. Let's be completely honest. What is there left in Tampa Bay after that?
I don't know. I really don't. Honestly,
okay.
Tampa Bay.
They took a kicker in the 5th round.
Yeah, well, they should have taken a lot of other things. Let's talk about things they should have taken besides Sean Bunting. Cornerback out of Central Michigan. Again, if you're taking the 7th overall a guy in the 2nd round, 7th pick, you got to get a better cornerback than Bunting. They took him because he's fast and he's tall, but the fact of the matter is he's not that good of a coverage guy. When Justin Lane is on the board, you take him instead and go take the guy who can cover a wide receiver. Jamel Dean, cornerback out of Auburn, same kind of deal. They took him because he's fast and he's got good physical traits, and they're counting on being able to coach these guys up. Fact of the matter is, usually, Drew, just because a guy is faster than everyone else, or taller than everyone else, or stronger than everyone else, does not make them a good football player. I feel like that's a lot of these guys. Mike Edwards, safety out of Kentucky, same deal. There were other guys on the board they could have gone with, like Amani Hooker, in the 3rd round, even that late, and gone and got a better player than that, who's a better pure football player. Instead, they took these guys because they're physical specimens. They're guys that are faster, are stronger, are taller, and guess what? That usually does not pan out. Just ask Oakland's franchise for the past 25 years.
That being said, all that being said, I think Devin White saves their grading for me. You literally got yourself a 10-year middle linebacker in that defense who's going to be someone like Derek Brooks, who just could possibly be a Hall of Famer if he pans out. I mean, some guy that's going to make your defense better. Hopefully he can find those missing pieces. Definitely don't like the 5th-round kicker. That makes absolutely no sense to me. But I didn't grade him low because I absolutely love the Devin White pick. I give him a C+.
And I'm okay with the roll of the dice in the kicker. Again, if you get... It doesn't have to be Justin Tucker, but if you get a very reliable... I think people underrate how important special teams are until you don't have that kicker punter that can make an influence. So I'm okay with that if you believe in this guy, and I haven't scouted him enough to know. So I'm giving him a benefit of the doubt there. Everywhere else, though, I'm giving him an F. I wanted to go D because of the Devin White thing, but when I looked at it and I said, look at the value at defensive end in the NFL versus middle linebacker, I love Devin White as a player. Let me just specify with that, but when you have this high talent of a defensive end, instead of it, you go and take the defensive end. You don't reach on the linebacker. That's just what it is, man. Especially because some people... Go ahead and say hi to Jeremy, because I saw him too. What's going on, Jeremy?
I was going to say hi first, Jeremy.
Well, I beat him to the punch.
I was going to say
the moral of the story here for me, Drew, to wrap it up with Tampa Bay here is what could have been. You could have drafted a lot of other guys here.
Could have.
You needed a lot of other spots. Instead, they went heavy on the secondary and just took the most physical guys in the world. It's not going to work. And I'm a Tampa Bay guy. I like Tampa Bay.
You could have found someone that wanted Josh Allen and traded back maybe 2-3 spots and probably still got Devin White.
All I can say is you choked. I like Devin White. I really like Devin White, but you choked.
You have to not ignore the fact that Devin White's going to be a great player for a long time.
I agree, but it's all about value. And at the end of the day, inside linebackers not as valuable as defensive end. You get an F. When you pass on an elite player, you get an F.
I got to give him a C+ because I just like Devin White that much.
Okay, let's talk Tennessee next.
Ooh,
now it's time to reverse the roles.
Let's do it.
All right, Jeffrey Simmons, the 19th overall pick, a guy that, if by all accounts, if he was healthy, probably would have been a 5th to a 10th overall pick, somewhere in that 5 to 10 range. I think this is a plus. I think, again, you can afford to punt everything, especially when you look at Tennessee and their roster and how they're not sure who's going to even play quarterback this year when you go and trade for a guy like Ryan Tannehill. I'm okay with this pick. I think this is going to be that next big defensive interior lineman that's going to help out the Titans. And sure, you punt on a year, but at worst case scenario, he comes back next year and he's a good player for you. So I like this pick at 19.
I like this pick too. But did the Titans make the playoffs this last year?
No.
Should they make the playoffs?
They were close. They were 9-7.
Yeah.
But should they with the defense should have. The offense probably could have stayed behind.
First number one pick overall. As much as I like Jeffrey Simmons and what he's going to be in the future, was this the right pick?
Yeah. And let me tell you what.
To make your team a playoff contender this year.
Yeah. Because there's no quarterback.
Hear me out. He's not going to play.
No, I know. Okay. You don't take a guy because he's going to help me this year. You can punt a year and then go say he's going to give me 10 more after that.
You're gonna sit there and take a player this year because you're going to sit here and pay Marcus Mariota.
So who would you take?
I don't know. I'm telling you right now, you didn't make the playoffs last year. So
there's one right answer here, Drew, and it's Jerry Tillery. If you would have said you take Jerry Tillery instead, I would say, Drew, that is a good point because I believe in Jerry Tillery. I think he's a really great player.
And he should be playing because you're going to need a player.
But who's the better guy?
Now.
You don't, though, because things are going to fall apart probably for Tennessee soon. They're 9-7 for the past 3 years. Marcus Mariota is in a contract year. Nobody knows if he's going to even stick around in Tennessee.
You guys will pay him $40 million a year.
Oh, God, I hope not. The other guy they have is Ryan Tannehill, who, again, the jury's still out after 9 years, right? Everyone's sitting there saying, we don't know if Tannehill is good. We don't know if Tannehill is bad. They have no answer at quarterback. So, yes, it's absolutely okay to punt a little bit. Jeremy's just eating popcorn watching us talk about this. It is absolutely okay to sit there and say, I may not get a guy this year, but I don't need a guy this year because even if they got the best player in the draft, if they got Nick Bosa, they're not winning the Super Bowl this year. And that's okay. Man, so you can take another great player. I know.
You're a great Titan fan.
Well, that's the thing. You have to look at things at least with a little bit of realism, right?
Chiefs have won every Super Bowl since I became a fan.
Okay. Well, I don't know how to tell you this, Drew, but that didn't happen. What kind of alternate reality was that?
So let's talk about your next pick, which I actually love this pick, A.J. Brown. I had him as a first-round talent. I absolutely love this guy. I think you picked the right choice. Corey Davis is a joke. I'll have to sit there and say that again. I met the guy.
I have his signature sitting on the bar, and you're going to call the guy a joke.
I asked him if he wanted to be a Chief. He says, is that a joke? So now he's a joke. So that's how that comes down to
You're saying, is that a joke? Of course I do.
That's a tuition. That's how it comes to happen. Now, Corey Davis is now a joke from now on to me until he becomes a Chief. But look, this is the right choice. This is the right choice because you needed weapons in your offense.
I don't think this was the guy that they absolutely had to have. This is kind of a multi-year thing where, yeah, we need to stack up the wide receiver room. We need talent to help out whatever quarterback winds up playing under center. So I'm cool with this pick. When you look at guys like Pro Football Focus saying he's the 20th rated player in their entire draft, I think this is a good pick here. He can play inside. The Titans have a lot of inside guys. He can play outside. He can be that number 2 to Corey Davis. I love this pick because if everyone focuses on Corey Davis, this kid's going to be open. If everyone focuses on A.J. Brown, Corey Davis is going to make an impact. The Titans got a lot better, and this is what good teams do. Not that the Titans are the best organization, but I believe in John Robinson as the GM. You take the best available player when he falls to you. They didn't need a wide receiver. They just paid Adam Humphries. They just had Corey Davis. They have Taywan Taylor and Tajay Sharp, who they also, I believe, still believe in. You didn't have to take a wide receiver in the second round when you could have taken an offensive lineman. You could have taken a defensive player to help out the defensive line or edge rusher. Instead, they said, this guy's really, really good.
You're playing for the future.
Exactly. And this guy's really, really good. And he fell to us in the second round.
He's better than every other receiver you have.
Well, that's a bit of... I guess you're an A.J. Brown guy. That's one of your guys now.
It's our guy.
But they took the value where it was there. They got a great player in the second round. So I love this pick as well. I think, again, good teams take the great players that fall to them. They don't sit there and say, I need this, so I'm taking this, and everything else be damned. Now let's talk about a pick I didn't like as much. Nate Davis, offensive guard out of Charlotte. I don't think he's special. I don't think he's anything special by any means. I think they wanted a rotational utility guy that, like we were talking about beforehand, may not be a day one starter.
I don't think he is
at a spot where they need a day one starter.
Absolutely. That's the biggest knock here is when you're going to sit there and take a guard, it's time for you to get a guy that starts day one. He is not a day one starter. Will he sit there and find time maybe game one? Probably. Special teams, things like that. He'll find himself there. And
he sets up in a weird frog stance that kind of bothers me a little bit. I wonder how that's going to translate to the NFL.
But they need help now.
And they needed an offensive lineman. So this was kind of like that need pick in the third round where they said, we need a guard. This kid can play guard. He can play tackle if we need him.
You said that was a panic pick.
I wouldn't call it panic, but it was a need-based pick. They said, we need a guard, and it's the third round.
The words exactly at the draft were, they're going to panic and draft
I don't remember saying that, but I was drunk, so that is
exactly what you said.
That is very possible. But, look, again, I think this is probably a bit of a reach at 18 in the third round for Nate Davis, especially when you had the guard from, I believe it was Penn State that was still hanging around. But if he turns it, they wanted run graders. They wanted guys who were able to pound the rock a little bit better, and Nate Davis does that better, I think, than anyone at that pick. So I'm okay with it. It's a value pick, I think, that is going to work out with what they needed. I don't love taking guys that you absolutely need, but when the need is that desperate, I think the Titans had to go offensive line here, or just absolutely punt because they lost both offensive guards and they signed one. So there's nobody waiting in the wings to take that role.
No, you're right.
You took the guy that may work out and play day one. One more guy, and then we'll grade him. Amani Hooker, fourth round safety, a guy that a lot of people had in the second round. This to me is the steal of the Titans draft. A coverage guy that is going to be able to fill in for Kevin Byard should he walk in free agency in the next couple of years coming up. I love this pick. I think he's a great player, and I think he's amazing value in the fourth round.
Guys, frog stance is when they lower his back legs and they straight arm their front arms.
He's almost in a three-point stance.
In the best way I can describe it. It's more of a defensive stance than it is like an offensive guard. It does look a little funky. I think you might be overplaying it a little bit, but I've seen the film where he does do it.
Yes.
I've seen it, and
he gets very low to the ground.
Stance, yes.
It's weird to look at, and you're going to look at it and say, how many offensive linemen do this in the NFL?
Meaning
Not too many.
He's definitely relying on the leverage when he pops up out of his stance. He wants to be the first guy underneath the body, but that doesn't work in the NFL.
Which is great until you come up against a defender with very long arms.
Doesn't
like
work
a lot of defenders, what do we love in the NFL?
Doesn't work in the NFL.
Long arm guys.
Yep.
So it's a bit weird to look at. I don't know if they're going to try to coach it out of him, whether they're going to sit there and say, we can make this work. But it's strange to watch. And I tell you, you're going to see one guy that's like in a three-point stance in the offensive line, and you're like, what is this dude doing?
It doesn't look like this frog. Yeah. I'll tell you that right now. It doesn't look like
Drew's
that
the
frog.
Reptile guy. I'm not sure why we have all the frogs in the bar.
It just happened.
let's grade him, Drew. Okay, because
do it.
again, the offensive lineman out of Georgia, whose name escapes me right now, not a special pick. One of those guys that maybe turns into something. They took one or two of those guys late in the draft. Nobody spectacular. How do you feel about the Tennessee Titans and their draft?
I don't mind their draft, but they did draft for this year. And when I think about the Tennessee Titans, I think about a really elite defense, a defense that could put them in the playoffs and win. But they didn't go in the playoffs last year. They did 2 years ago. So sitting there saying, I'm going to draft for the future doesn't make any sense for me, because your future is now a $20 million a year quarterback in Mariota, if that's what you're going to pay him, unless you're drafting someone else. So that means you're literally saying this year's a down year, and I'm willing to wait 2 to 3 years before we find our best our best quarterback. So
no one rebuilds like the Titans.
That being said, it's a C+. I don't hate it, and I know I'm giving a lower draft than probably I do most of them, but I think it's just a little bit of hate towards Jake.
And that's okay. I think I hate on the Kansas City Chiefs enough to have that one coming. I'm going to give the Titans a B+. Again, I think they got great value in Jeffrey Simmons, who would have been a top 5 to top 10 pick in another year, or if he came out healthy. They got a top 20 guy, if you listen to Pro Football Focus, and a lot of guys also had him in the first round, including both of us, with A.J. Brown. So I think that was an incredible steal. Again, they maybe missed on a third-round pick, so I can't really fault them for that necessarily. And Amani Hooker, I think, is a steal in the fourth as well. I'm going to go B+ here, because I believe the Titans, you're right, maybe they don't have the biggest impact right now immediately, but I don't think the Titans are looking at it like we're winning the Super Bowl this year if we had the right guy here. So I'm okay with this. I think they did a good job drafting. Again, John Robinson, if he has made his bread in any kind of way for the Titans, GM, if you don't know, has done it through the draft. So I think he's done a good job as well. Jeremy's saying C, but I believe Jeremy is also a Colts fan. So C for Colts.
And
hopefully the Titans actually beat them for once.
Me.
Well, y'all are both smoking crack, and that's okay.
Let's do the
talk
very
Washington.
Last team. Let's do it.
Hail to the Redskins. Dwayne Haskins falls to Washington at 15.
It's the guys they wanted.
Is this the right move?
We all
know. We all said they needed someone better than Keenum, right? And our criticism was
desperately.
Our criticism was they need a quarterback, and this team could be a playoff team. So they took what might be the second best quarterback in the draft at pick 15, and the third quarterback off the board. I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all.
This guy doesn't fit any of the quarterbacks that they have in their roster last year with Colt McCoy and Alex Smith. None of them actually fit in there.
Jeremy says he likes crack. Yeah, butt crack, Jeremy. Eat that.
He doesn't fit anything that the Redskins did last year in their offense. They want a mobile quarterback, but sitting there grabbing Case Keenum and sitting there drafting Dwayne Haskins. They're now saying that their pocket passer is what they're looking for. Dwayne Haskins is one of those quarterbacks coming out of the draft that can make any throw that you want him to make. His bread and butter is definitely low to medium passes. That's what you're literally looking for him to do. He does have a deep ball, but it's not extremely accurate. But luckily for him, there's not a lot of
guys catching the ball deep.
Catching the balls deep there. So
there is one
really well.
After this draft, Terry McLaurin out of Ohio State. Again, you're getting teammates here, so you already have a little bit of a repertoire between these guys. I think he's going to be a bit more of a down-the-receiver guy that Washington has been missing for years. Basically, since Pierre Garçon left and got old, I think they now have a down-the-field guy in him. I want to talk about Montez Sweat, too. When they traded up for a guy that we were talking about might go in the top 10.
Yeah.
And to the NFL's credit, I think they held off on him because I see him as one of those guys with a lot of bust potential here. I think Montez Sweat, when you look at him going at 26, this is a much better spot for him. He has elite potential, but he also has some bust potential as well. Taking an edge defender when you already have those big Alabama boys in the middle, look, you got better at your strength. I love this pick for Washington as well. I thought Dan Snyder was supposed to take this draft over and just go way out in left field here, but Drew, he made some good. They made some good picks.
Yeah, no, they really did. The Montez Sweat falling to him and making the right decision to trade up was the right decision. I also like the Bryce Love running back choice. I know a lot of them are knocking it down. He's got the ACL tear that happened late last year.
Yep.
It doesn't make any difference to me. I think it's the right move. After that, I don't really see a whole lot of value in these picks. But I know you got one more guy.
Kelvin Harmon.
And I like Kelvin Harmon. I think that's...
We talked about this guy being a high second-round pick, maybe even sneaking into the first round. I think you did, too. I think you had him in the first round, if I remember right, sir. But, yeah, you hope not. The moral of the story is when you're getting a guy with this kind of grading, falling all the way down to the sixth-round pick, I get it, he didn't have a good pro day. So what? You don't play football in a pro day. You play it on the field. We saw what he could do at NC State. Did you?
Yeah.
we saw what he could do at NC State.
I had him in the first round.
Yeah, we saw what he could do at NC State. To get a guy like this in the 6th round, again, fantastic steal, which is why I have them as the, I believe, 3rd or 4th highest grade in my entire draft. I have Washington getting an A in this. The only minus, or not, I don't even have a minus. The only guy that I saw as an equal value to their pick was McLaurin going in the 3rd round, and they needed that deep threat. So when you get a guy that's at the right value and is a need for your team, that's a plus for me too here, Drew. They killed it. And I don't say that about Washington very often. They killed this draft.
Washington's my second favorite team. I don't know if you guys knew that. I am a Redskins fan after the Chiefs. I like their draft. I like what they did. I like the value they got for their picks, but I'm just not a Haskins believer. I don't believe that guy is a future of the organization.
Whether you believe him or not, it needs to get better than Case Keenum. And that's my point.
And that's
so
what
roll the dice and say this. Oh, well, I mean,
that's exactly. No,
but
you're
I
fine.
always do.
You're fine. No, you're good. You're absolutely right. But there was definitely a need at quarterback, and I believe he is better. I struggled. I wanted to give him an A. I wanted to give him an A minus, but I don't know what Haskins is going to be. I gave him a B plus.
And that's fair. I think when you look at the back end of the draft, I think they absolutely did a great job. Whether you believe in Dwayne Haskins as the 15th overall pick instead of 6th, I think they got a guy that probably shouldn't have fell to them. So they took a quarterback that is probably an upgrade over Case Keenum. And when you play defense like they do, all you need is a guy who's better than Case Keenum, and you're probably going to be a playoff team.
Yep.
I love exactly everything Washington did. So I went a little bit higher, and I went with an A. Hey guys, thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, make sure you subscribe to our page here and throw us a like if you don't mind.
Guys, remember this is sports around the bar, so grab your favorite drinks, join one of the fastest growing communities on YouTube. We can't wait to hear from you.